So that's your typical unlicensed stuff. We actually have another unlicensed product, which a lot of people have either seen or just heard about but don't know a lot about, and that's our P2P24. Now, this operates in the unlicensed 24 gig band. There's roughly 100 megahertz in both transmit and receive on this band that you can use. And what this means is you can run these radios in this unlicensed band, and this is basically a 100 meg full duplex radio. So 100 megs one way, 100 megs at the same time, basically like connecting to Ethernet. You also have the addition to add in 4 T1s or E1s, and that rides on top. So if you're completely, running at full bore with the Ethernet, then you're getting a true throughput of 108 megs. But the T1s right on top and don't interfere with what your actual Ethernet speeds are. The TDM stuff is a different setup on top. Now, what I like to tell people with the hardware and the way this is set up is basically like this is a licensed link radio that runs in the unlicensed band. So you're going to get that same type of performance for speed, latency, and packet per second count that you're going to get on any licensed link. So we're talking, under 1 millisecond latency, 100,000 or even more packets per second. Our little tester sort of freaks out when trying to run it, so we know it's more than 100. One thing to keep in mind when you are using 24 gig is that it does have a reduced output, or not a reduced, but it has a fairly low output power when compared to a lot of the other products. So we're talking, max power is, 3 to 5 dB, depending on where you are and the channel sizes and modulations you're running. So typically in the States, we say, up to about 5 miles where you use links, and it really depends on where your range zone. I've run links out in the deserts, out in Nevada and stuff that were pushing 8 miles, and they work really well. Some areas down in Florida, we can only get 2 or 3 miles before we run out of throughput when the rain hits. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail later when we talk about the link planner. We've got a couple of different setups. We've got the US or the ANSI setup, which is 5, 10, 20, or 30 megahertz channels, and we've got the ETSI setup for mainly Europe, a lot of South American countries and stuff like that. Other parts of the world rely on the ETSI standard. So we have that both in terms of output powers and different modulation rates and different channel sizes. Antenna selection, we have a 1-foot antenna and a 2-foot antenna available. It's a slit-fit antenna, so basically the ODU, which is pictured here on the slide, bolts directly on the back of the antenna. So no flexible waveguide, no coax or anything like that. Basically, PUE runs to the radio, bolts directly on the back of the antenna, and you're done. It's a real sturdy, heavy-duty setup. And the 1-foot antenna is 35 dBi, the 2-foot antenna is 40 dBi. So these are good when you're running your link calc so you can map out what you actually need for a link. If there's ever any question, of course, go bigger. A bigger antenna is always more helpful. Next product we're going to discuss here is our P2P620S. This is our licensed product. We started shipping this at the beginning of this year. We've not done a ton of advertising or marketing on that, just because a lot of it's us testing everything out, learning how to support the gear, learning how to sell the gear, because this is our first licensed product. But things have been working out really well. Streetwave's been doing a really good job of getting these out the door and giving us a lot of good feedback and everything. We've been very happy with how the system's been working out. Now, this setup is a split system. So basically what you see is at the bottom, that's the indoor IDU, the indoor unit, and then the ODU up top, which is your outdoor unit. And the way it works is you plug all your data and stuff in your HUD inside, run your coax cable from that end connector up your tower to the ODU. ODU is, again, it's a slit-fit ODU that bolts onto the back of the antenna. Now, you can using LMR 400, you're good for about 200 meters or so, or 600-700 feet basically of throughput. If you use between the IDU and the ODU, so you can really get some height on it. If you use lower loss cable, you can actually push that further. So this system is a 620S because it's a 620 aggregator, basically 310 megs full duplex. We've actually just had a firmware release that has actually pushed that up to about 325 megs using the biggest channel and the fastest modulation rate. So these numbers are a little out of date. Very cost-effective system that we're running, and one of the nice things about these systems is that basically you get the whole package when you buy the unit. So you get all your power supplies and everything all come with it. It comes fully licensed, so you don't have to buy any goofy upgrade keys or anything like that. So when you get the unit, all you basically need is your coax and your Cat5, and it's fully licensed. It's going to run full bore. So as long as you plan the link properly, it's going to run as fast as the unit can run. So the one thing to keep in mind when you're pricing things out is, make sure all the accessories and everything come with it. It's really important. Now, we selected a wide frequency range from 7 to 23 gigahertz, and actually we just added 26 gigahertz for some international locations. But typically what you'll see in the U.S. is 11 and 18 and some 23. But mainly what we're using is 11 and 23. We do have some 7 and 8 gig available for government and stuff like that. But typically your big hitters in the States, that's what we keep on stock. We keep everything on hand for those, so there is no 2 or 3 month delay on most of the stuff. So you order it, you're ready to go, everything will be up and ready before you get your license, and you can run with it. We have a wide mix of channel sizes, all the way from 3.5 megahertz to 56, different channel plans and channel sizes depending on which region you're in. All these specs can be found on the spec sheet on our website too, so you can get all the really fun numbers. It does support ACM as a hitless ACM, so if your link can modulate down, or you set it up to modulate down, it'll do that. 5 minutes of clear running, it'll go ahead and move back up, which is a really efficient process and something we've noticed on our link, our beta link. We've been running here for about a year and a couple months, so it's one thing we've tested out heavily, and it's been working really well. One nice thing about the IDU, ODU type of setup is that we basically have one IDU that you can use across all the different frequencies. So if you've got a couple of different frequencies out for IDUs, you can just stock one device. And for ODUs, of course, you would need to spare the high or low in the band that you need. But being able to stock just the one IDU is a really cost-effective stocking spare solution. And it's got all your typical fun stuff. This is a different GUI setup than the other products, but it's got all your typical fun stuff like SNMP support and reporting and everything like that. Real basic type of setup, not a whole lot to it. You're setting the frequency modulation rate and going. You can also set all your VLAN stuff. If you want to get more in detail, all your VLAN, you're splitting between the management ports, so on and so forth. So all that information is in the manual. We do have an optional T1E1 circuit for this as well. You can put in the expansion card, which is cost-effective, cheap little card you plug in, and it will give you the option to run up to 2 T1 or E1 circuits, depending on your region. Now, we're going to show some pictures here, some different deployments, because pictures are fun, and it's kind of cool to see this stuff deployed all over the world. These pictures actually come from our Facebook site. We had a contest to give cool install pictures and gave away some radios recently. So if you're into Facebook, just look and check us out. You can search for LigoWave and see there's product announcements we do, different contests and fun stuff like that. So here's the single pole, your typical first-gen units you'll see installed here in Colombia. Pretty standard stuff. Again, Tasmania. One thing I want to point out, this is our 620 system. If you look on the left-hand side, at the bottom it's paired up with another one, but that's actually behind a billboard. They had to hide this link, so they stuck it in the inner workings of a billboard setup, shooting through that little display board or whatever you want to call it. It's working real well for them. But the thing I'd like to point out is you can see how the slip fit works. I believe that's a 4 foot, 2 foot. I'm not entirely sure. I can't gauge distance very well, but you can see basically how the unit just bolts directly onto the back of that, how the mounting brackets and whatnot work. So pretty neat little setup there. Some units we have in the Philippines. Again, this is our single pole setup. Here's our Mexico setup. You'll see an example. This is our dual pole MIMO units using the dual pole dishes. This is where we've done a lot of our long distance testing. You can see them shooting off in the mountain. This is where we've been pushing the MIMO platforms up to 60, 70 miles to really max out what we can do with it. You'll need to run those really long distances. I will like to note you need to run the 6.7 version of the software. It's a new release. It's actually a public beta that we're working on right now. You can download it directly off our website, and there's a lot of information gathering. We made a lot of different timing changes and stuff to max out some extra performance parameters, and we're just making sure everyone's real happy with it before we launch. So it's a good way to get feedback from everyone in that development cycle. This is our Irish guys, very patriotic. This is our 523 MIMO unit. You can see the size of the 23 dBi integrated antenna.